We live in a time of colliding worldviews, of broken paradigms and combating belief systems. We do not have a uniting religion, a shared mythology, or even a comprehensive vision of what the future should look like. To introduce myself, my name is Becca Tarnas, and I'm an archetypal cosmologist. I study the movements of the planets, looking for correlations between planetary alignments and the archetypal dynamics of human experiences and cultural events from throughout history. This study has revealed the deep archetypal patterning of our cosmos, a patterning that is not directly causal, but seems to be woven into the very fabric of our universe. So rather than delivering a traditional lecture for this Mothership Earth Summit, a lecture in which I might have demonstrated the consistent correlations between the qualities of various historical eras with specific alignments of the planets, or illuminated the biographies of various intellectuals, philosophers, artists, writers, or political leaders through the lens of their natal charts, I've decided to do something rather different. I want to devote this time to storytelling, to share a cosmogonic myth, a creation story. This story tells the tale of these archetypal powers and how they came into being as the world came into being. Now, a question that I and others in my field of archetypal cosmology are often asked is, were the archetypal meanings of the planets projected by human beings onto the planets, or are these meanings inherent to the cosmos? We certainly know that the correlations that we see, they're too consistent and far-reaching simply to be projections. But they're also much too complex and nuanced and subtle and open to creative human participation to be caused by some physical mechanism alone. I'm convinced that these archetypal principles that we see associated with the planets in our solar system, their powers far beyond anything the human could conceive of, and are not only part of our solar system, but perhaps they're primordial threads, the warp and weft of the cosmos itself. If so, in this story, perhaps you can receive a glimpse of how they came to be. Before the beginning, oneness was everything. Oneness was nothing. Nothing was all, and everything was not. It was as if all was water, and the water was nothing but stillness. There was no movement, no differentiation, nothing but primordial silence, pure potential, imagination without image, a sacred eternity of endless and beginningless non-being. The oneness was, and the oneness was not. If you can imagine the infinite ocean stretched in all directions without ever meeting a horizon, if the waters were neither dark nor light, neither cold nor warm, without ripple or wave, perhaps you could see the unseeable. All realms in potentia, all opposites unified, all forms unformed in a singular unity. But within the infinite ocean grew a desire. A desire for what the infinite ocean could not conceive, but a desire for something, for being. And with that desire, a new power was born, a primal principle of the depths, of transformation, of evolution, a spiraling torrent with the power of creation. But creation balanced by its cost, destruction. The silent waters of the infinite ocean began to vibrate. A ripple formed. And with that ripple, what neither was nor was not came into being. The ripple grew into a wave, and the waves began to roll and roil towards the eternal horizon. The waters of the infinite ocean that had been neither cool nor warm began to simmer, to bubble, and to boil. And as they boiled, they began to move in an ever-growing spiral, a whirlpool or maelstrom so great and so massive and so terrible that nothing could withstand its pull down into the depths of being. The oneness of the infinite ocean passionately consummated its destruction so that all being might be created. And with that marriage of the transcendent sacred potential with the powers of the roaring depths, oneness became two-ness. And from two, a third was born. A spark of light, unexpected, sudden, awakening, burst forth from the spiraling chasm of the primal waters. The pressure and intensity of the driving force churning the sacred ocean ignited beings of light, awakened celestial flames, diamond fire from the heavens that we now call stars. As the stars awakened, their light bodied forth into the newly created world. Each star ignited tenfold more, and each of those 100-fold, 1,000-fold, until this dazzling, excited, creative pulse combined with the primordial spiraling evolutionary power and threatened to burn up the entirety of what had once been the infinite ocean, transmuting all its as yet unrealized potential into sparks of blazing light that would detonate ever hotter until nothing was left but a magma of destruction. And so a new fourth power was born. The blazing lights of the newborn stars concentrated and were given form. Gravity pulled the stars into themselves, and they became corporeal, embodied, real. Structure ordered the cosmos. Boundaries were set, delineating solid realms. What was light became matter, and matter had weight, mass, quantifiability, tangibility. As the new principle crystallized into galactical structures, it also brought forth another dimension of existence: time. When time was born, it came into the world hand in hand with its twin, death. To keep the stars in order, to keep them from bursting infinitely forth into exploding firecrackers of blinding, blazing light. They had to be delimited, given finitude, a lifespan, a beginning and an end. And as gravity pulled the stars into themselves, many of them began to go out, to die, to return to nothingness. The contractions tightened harder and faster, suffocating the life out of the newborn universe. The stars began to rush into darkness, and the gravitational force of time and death became too strong to overcome, which brought yet another fifth power into being. Lest the gravitational force crush existence itself into an abyss of nothingness, this new force opened the space around time and began to push outwards, creating billows of glorious breadth and height and width, where before all had been compact and crowded. And as the universe expanded, broadening its horizons into eternity, the stars began to celebrate, brimming over with joy, delight, and abundance. The magnanimity of the exuberant force resounded with the glory of the world, a kingdom of kingdoms heralding the most extraordinary of achievements. For a time, this infinite space, there was balance held within it. The expansive force grew ever greater, while the gravitational force concentrated ever tighter. And new forms were birthed into light by the consummation of the primordial evolutionary drive with the transcendent unity of the infinite ocean. As the stars came alight in the spiral arms of innumerable galaxies beyond count, the stars called forth their own smaller worlds, each to gather around them. First traveling widely as cosmic dust, then condensing inward into harder and more solid forms of matter, this overabundance of structure began to collide into itself. What once was held in balance now found itself in violent conflict, in competition for space, warring for annihilation or supremacy. And with the countless new collisions, yet another sixth power took form. One driven towards ever more furious and fiery movement, giving motion to matter, racing against the tracks of time with great haste around the stars and gathering speed for the eternal chase. But this force was too hot, too volatile, ripping apart the worlds that had only just been formed, to go colliding into yet others, breaking apart the balance and rending antagonism and division in its drive for competition. To quell the raging warrior, a being of love stepped forth. Let's dance, you and I, came the dulcimer tones of this newest seventh power to the scene. Let's dance and create passion between our forms. And so harmony gently smoothed the paths of the spiraling orbits and artfully carved the planetary bodies into exquisite spheres. And together these two powers, these two lovers, danced around the many stars of the celestial night. Every facet of the diamond sky now glistened with beauty. From the depths of the infinite ocean came a thought. I want to remember. I want to remember how all this came to be. And with that thought, the youngest, eighth power was born. Reflecting back on all that had come before, this thought formed ideas, words, language, story. The universe became an unfolding tale, a mythology writing itself out with every expanding moment of time. For consciousness to remember, the entire cosmos had to be created in order to write it down. As the planets formed their orbital paths around the stars, this same story of creation was repeated 1,000-fold and more to craft each of the solar system worlds. In the story of one planet, in one solar system, we can observe the primordial powers in the repeating creative sequence once more. This planet was close enough to its star to stay warm, but not so close as to be burned up, nor was it too far as to freeze over. On this planet, there was an ocean, a mere drop of the infinite ocean, and yet the infinite ocean all the same was contained in that drop. And this ocean boiled and brewed as it married the magma of the planet's depths until at last continents formed as the molten matter cooled and the oceans were divided into seas. Just as the stars had ignited in the birth of the universe, here now a new form of creativity was awakened. The spark of life, infinitesimally small, yet growing all the greater. But in order to grow and complexify, life had to be willing to die. And so the balance between life and death was realigned. Every organism that competed to survive, that strove to be faster, fitter, to fight with finesse, found itself swept up in a larger dance of harmony, where every death was the promise of new life. And so the world was generated and renewed. And all the time, the story of its unfolding was remembered by the consciousness who had been there from before the beginning, who had come into being to recall its own existence. But two more powers were awaiting to come into being. For although they had been there all along, they had not yet been enacted by the world. For the world longed to feel its experience. And with that longing emerged the ninth power, the principle of emotion, sensation, feeling, care. Not only did organisms compete for survival, they nurtured each other, one generation to the next, with tenderness and gentle compassion, cradling new life into embodiment. And as life differentiated and complexified further, not only was it capable of feeling and awareness, but that feeling turned inward and saw by a new light, the light of self-awareness. And with the emergence of this self-awareness came individuality, autonomy, a sense of one's own destiny and purpose in the world. Only as an individual could the self not only be the world, but be in reciprocal relationship with the world. And so the self looked out onto the cosmos that had been created and knew itself to be one with it, yet also separate. And this was the final 10th power. And so the primordial powers were all formed. And although it seems they bodied forth in sequence, truly they emerged all at once, with one another and always in relationship to each other. They were each given their own domains to govern, not as ruler, but by being its very essence. The infinite ocean dwelt in all the waters of the world, in the mists and fogs, in the rivers and waterfalls. In every shade of blue, the infinite ocean could be found, in all realms of the invisible and the ineffable, the magical and the enchanted, the sacred, the transcendent, numinous and heavenly. The infinite potential of the oceanic oneness could be found in the realms of imagination, whose efflorescence is in the fantasy of other worlds, within other worlds, within other worlds, eternally into the beyond. The gaping chasm of the primordial depths that had destroyed the stillness of the infinite ocean to drive the evolution of creation could be found in every struggle for survival, in every deep underworld realm, in all moments of primal terror and mass devastation, in every raw sexual encounter, every propulsion through the birth canal, every rotting decomposition and regeneration of life and death. The spark of new light awakening the stars could be found in every electric shock of creative breakthrough, every moment of liberation and freedom, every untethered rebellion and innovative expression, in every sudden, unexpected pulse of enlightening, ingenious insight. The power of gravitation and contraction dwelt in every structure and foundation, every rock and bone, in all that was serious, sad, fallen, or failed, all that was bound by time to pass away into death and loss and mourning. The heavy principle forged endurance and acceptance through its trials, slowly giving the gift of wisdom to all who accepted the responsibilities it laid upon them. The force of expansion delighted in all that was joyous and celebratory, all that grew rich with abundance, the honey that dripped from the comb, the grain that grew heavy in the field, and the fruit that was plucked in the harvest. It dwelt in every queen and king, every traveler and philosopher, every generous, blessed moment of ringing laughter. Meanwhile, the colliding force of competition found itself engaged upon every battlefield and in every race, in each moment of bloodshed or sparring, in every drawn sword or burst of anger. It could be found in every impulse to leap into action, each energized step forward, in every fire, whether raging through a forest or burning as humble coals among the ashes. And their harmonious power could be seen in the beauty of every flower that blossoms, every exquisite jewel, every beloved's face, every work of art. This power dwelt in every song, each painting and sculpture, every dance of lovemaking. And the storyteller lived through every word and thought, every idea communicated or learned, whether written, spoken, or simply echoed in memory. I want to remember, the infinite ocean had said, because the oneness knew it was liable to forget the more complex and differentiated it became. How can I help myself to remember where I come from when my oneness has been splintered into innumerable selves? It was the shining power of the will to be, the force of self-awareness, who knew what to do. We dwell in all things of this world, this power said, each governing our own domains, yet always in relationship to each other. Let us each take a seat in the cosmos, so those who are born into and die out of the world can always find us and understand who we are in our fullness. I will take the seat of central light at the heart of this solar system, for I am the power of centration and self, and all will turn to me to illuminate their paths so that they might see clearly by the light of rationality and clarity. I will hold the center so that all might find their centers within themselves and within the cosmos. I will be known as Soul, as the Sun, and by countless other names. Each of the remaining powers chose a seat throughout the solar system, one of the spinning spheres circling the central sun. The power of thought and memory stayed closest to the sun, and one of its names was Mercury, while the power of harmony and love bestowed upon itself the name of Venus, and chose to stay near the exquisite jewel of the living planet, to grace it with its diamond beauty. The power of fire and competition claimed the red sphere just beyond the living planet and asserted itself as Mars. For the kingly seat of the magnanimous, joyful power of expansion, the largest planet was chosen, a sphere so great it could almost have burst forth into another solar star. This jovial sovereign and kingmaker crowned itself with the name of Jupiter. For the power of gravitation and contraction, the weighty mass of the ringed planet was chosen, and it bore the name of Saturn. For the awakener of creativity and insight, the brilliant turquoise sphere that rebelliously rotates on a horizontal axis was adopted, and it tried on many names, playfully misnomering itself for a spell as Uranus. The infinite ocean infused its being with the deep blue planet near the solar system's outermost regions, cloaking itself in the name Neptune. And the primordial power of destruction and creation, of the death rebirth mystery, chose an intensely volcanic, compact sphere in such an extreme position on the solar system's edge that it could barely maintain its own orbital path for its full journey around the sun. This power donned the name of Pluto for one of its many titles. One more power remained, but this sensitive, emotional principle could not decide where to settle. It wanted to stay close to the home of the living planet, but there was only one small sphere nearby in which it could abide, a sphere too small for all that this power was capable of feeling, nurturing, nourishing, and bringing under its care. But seeing this power's indecision, its impulse to care not only for the living planet, but for the whole of creation, the sun understood. Make the moon your home, the sun said, and you will be recognized by all who dwell on the living planet as the mother of all. For as the moon, this power was able to carry the light of the sun like a lantern even into the darkness of the night. And with that light, care for and safeguard all those upon the living planet. And when the moon came close to the sun and its light dwindled or was even completely obscured, then the inhabitants of the living planet could see the many lights of the night sky and could recognize that this nurturing maternal power dwelt not only in the moon, but in the womb of the entire cosmos, holding everything within its embrace. By dwelling in these celestial spheres, the primordial powers could be found by the inhabitants of the living planet. And slowly through time, they learned how to trace their movements, to understand their patterns, and eventually to predict the repeating relational formations they would make with each other. For while the great powers chose these planetary seats as their heavenly abodes, where they fully express themselves, it was in the ever-changing domain of the living planet that they truly came forth, this unique jewel of the cosmos that the powers named Earth. For Earth was where all the powers came to play and work and dance and to create with each other, expressing themselves through every life, through every era, every culture, and every ecosystem. The earth was the moving microcosm to reflect this macrocosm, the jewel that captured the entire process of creation in its crystalline depths. As the inhabitants of the earth discovered the primordial powers living in their world and in themselves, they were reminded of their origins from before there was even a ripple in the oneness of the infinite ocean. Whenever the oneness forgot from whence it came, it could look to the stars to remember, to hear the voices of the planetary spheres whispering its origins and eternally repeating the act of creation in every pulsing rhythm of space and time. My deepest thanks for listening to this cosmogonic tale, this archetypal creation myth. May it weave into your dreams, may it spark your imagination, and may it dance with your soul under the mingled light of sun, moon, and stars.